What did Dave Lazowski's body go through in this terrible accident, and may the changes in his body really help being a superhero? This video answers these and other fascinating questions related to the movie Kick-Ass. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and support the video with your activity. This is very important for me. This is a story telling that one costumed weirdo can sometimes really be what people need, and he can really make a big difference, even despite the fact that Dave Lazowski's real superpowers are an amazing combination of teenage naivety and optimism. In addition to that, he's absolutely invisible. For girls, that is. But the problem is that superheroes only exist in comics, while scumbags exist in the real world. And at one point, Dave Lazowski decides to prove the opposite, making up his mind to move from daily aping in front of the mirror in a superhero scuba diving suit to action. But teenage naivety turns out to have so little place in this world. Within seconds, Dave suffers a stab wound to the abdomen. And yes, this promises him tons of problems, such as large blood vessels located in this area. And if we don't see a huge blood loss from Dave's wound, it doesn't mean that the blood loss cannot be internal, quickly filling his abdomen. Possible damage of the intestines is also dangerous if the content of the intestines enters the abdominal cavity, which causes inflammation processes and sharp mobility decrease. So penetrating injury of the abdomen is a very dangerous injury indeed. Just as dangerous as being hit by a car at high speed. Yes, that's precisely what happened to Dave shortly afterward. It is somewhat difficult to guess what the speed of the car that hit Dave was, but judging purely by the mechanics of Dave's body when he was hit, the speed was quite decent, even if it may seem otherwise. And the driver only attempted to brake after he hit our character. That is, the main aggravating factor of this accident for Dave was that the car was moving at a constant speed when it hit him, and it took place on the part of the road with perfect visibility. See, this is why it's so important to observe speed limits. In case the driver did that, he would have time to brake. According to statistical data from one study, 80% of fatal pedestrian accidents occur at speeds over 35 miles per hour. The mechanics of the accident that Dave's body went through are quite common and can result in combined injuries for the victim. And in these scenes, this accident, together with its consequences for Dave, are shown quite realistically. Dave's body was hit by the car's body, hit against the windshield, and crashed onto the pavement. Now let's take a closer look at this accident, where the injuries of lower limbs together with pelvis injuries are the most common in pedestrian accidents. Right, the first impact from the protruding part of the vehicle, which has a limited contact area, is absorbed precisely by the legs. Then the following happens. Due to the car hitting the lower part of the body and the direction of the car's movement, the victim's body is thrown onto the bonnet and windshield. It is precisely the contact of the victim's head with the windshield that poses extremely dangerous risks for cervical spine injuries and traumatic brain injuries. At this point, it's clear that Dave's head hitting the windshield has critical consequences. Next, the victim is thrown onto the asphalt surface. This, in Dave's case, exacerbates injuries to the lower limbs, back, and of course his head, which has already suffered enough. Now, I'll repeat, the scene shows the consequences for the character's body as well as the mechanics of the accident itself very realistically. And of course, the risk of injury in such accidents goes far beyond the injuries mentioned above. We must also consider multiple soft tissue bruises and internal organ injuries, including ruptures of internal organs, which by the way were diagnosed in Dave in the comic. Yes, the latter is more often diagnosed in victims who have survived or not survived an accident while being in the driver's seat when it comes to collisions with protruding parts of the interior, such as the steering wheel, for example. However, what is much less realistic is what's about to happen to Dave afterward. The recovery process after the accident, despite taking months, apparently went quite optimistically for Dave. This resonates with the source material where Dave literally went through hell. But just like in the comic, Dave underwent a series of surgeries aimed at restoring a skeleton. This reminds us once again just how severe the injuries he sustained during the accident were. Here we see cranioplasty for his skull, multiple elements of bone fixation where the repositioning of the bone fragments is achieved through fixation with plates, and elements of peroseous fixation. It's when the fixators are installed transversely in relation to the bones. Just to remind you, I'm merely an interested amateur. Now, generally, these fixators, for the most part, are not meant to be removed after the fractures have healed, as they shouldn't be rejected by the body. Of course, except for the cases of individual reactions and situations where the patient clearly feels discomfort because of them. It seems that Dave does not experience any discomfort from having these foreign elements in his body. However, I've heard comments of several people having local osteosynthesis elements in their bodies. They all said that it was quite uncomfortable. But perhaps this also depends on the level of surgical intervention. So, Dave, motivated by the continued continuation of his superhero career is somewhat inspired by all this. He even compares himself to Wolverine, suggesting that his skeleton has become more indestructible than it was before. Is that really the case, though? Generally speaking, no. First of all, it's unlikely that anyone has tested this in practice to the extent that Dave has. Second, the information from the open sources says that people with osteosynthesis elements in their bodies are advised to avoid re-injury to the bone elements. The fracture can occur at the edges of the fixation plates, which would make the process of further rehabilitation much more difficult. In addition, Dave has encountered another aggravating factor. He faced a fairly common consequence that manifests in reality for many patients who have suffered such serious injuries, of course not necessarily caused by a car accident. I mean partial loss of sensitivity in the nervous system, specifically a partial loss of sensitivity to pain. Yes, such things do occur in reality, and let's just say they don't bode well. You know, pain signals in the human nervous system exist for a reason. Their purpose is to alert the brain to danger and prompt it to take timely measures to avoid that danger. For example, in the second part, Dave only noticed that his rib was broken the next day. Yes, there are indeed moments in reality when people do not immediately realize they have a broken rib. I know this once again from my acquaintance's experience. But considering Dave's extremely high pain threshold, just imagine what kinds of injuries in his body he might not pay attention to for a long time and fail to take timely measures to address. These can be fractures, serious bruises to internal organs, and more. Analyzing what was shown in the film, Dave's peripheral nervous system malfunction led to him becoming almost insensitive to minor and moderate injuries. However, this is less applicable to the areas of the body with minimal soft tissue around the bones, such as the face and, for example, the knees. These areas can still cause him significant pain. So, to sum up the realism of Dave's superhero powers, can these modifications to his body, let's be generous and call them that, help him in his superhero activities? Partially, yes, say once or twice. But being a long-term superhero just doesn't look feasible, considering the number of fixating elements in his skeleton and his high pain threshold, which makes it impossible to address traumatic consequences in a timely manner. Nevertheless, Dave Lizowski's story is not a story of a weirdo in a scuba diving suit. It's a story that reminds us to look both ways when stepping onto the road. If you like this video, subscribe to my channel, give it a thumbs up, comment, and share this video with your friends. It means a lot to me. Bye!